Good news for our favourite ground-dwelling parrot, the Kākāpō. Once considered functionally extinct, is now expected to have its biggest breeding season on record.
By the early 1970s, most scientists in New Zealand quietly assumed the Kākāpō was already gone. Nobody had confirmed a living bird in years. The world's only flightless parrot, a strange moss-green, night-dwelling bird that could weigh as much as 4 kilograms, seemed to have finally slipped into extinction after more than a century of decline. And yet, in 1974, a small government team launched a new search anyway, based on nothing more than old reports and a stubborn refusal to give up. What that search eventually uncovered and what it took to save it would become one of the most remarkable rescue stories in the history of wildlife conservation. To understand how the Kākāpō ended up on the edge of extinction in the first place, you have to go back much further than the 1970s. Before humans ever arrived in New Zealand, Kākāpō were one of the most common birds on the islands, found in forests from the top of the North Island to the bottom of the South. They had evolved for millions of years in complete isolation, with no land mammals around to hunt them. As a result, they lost the need to fly, developed a heavy, ground-dwelling body, and relied almost entirely on camouflage and stillness to avoid the birds of prey that were their only real threat. That strategy worked perfectly for millions of years. It failed catastrophically the moment mammalian predators arrived. Polynesian settlers brought dogs and rats with them centuries ago, and both hunted Kākāpō relentlessly, since a large, flightless, slow-moving, ground-nesting bird that freezes instead of fleeing is about as easy as prey gets. When European settlers arrived in the early 1800s, they brought an entirely new wave of threats: cats, stoats, and additional rat species, all of which found Kākāpō easy, defenseless targets. Habitat destruction from forest clearance made things worse, and introduced deer and possums began competing with Kākāpō for the same food. The population collapsed with alarming speed. By the time anyone in government thought to formally act, in 1894, a pioneering conservationist named Richard Henry led an effort to relocate several hundred Kākāpō to Resolution Island, a supposedly predator-free refuge in Fiordland on the South Island's southwest coast. It should have worked. Instead, stoats reached the island within about 6 years anyway, most likely by swimming across a narrow channel, and the population Henry had worked so hard to protect was wiped out. For the next several decades, Kākāpō sightings became rarer and rarer, until, by the mid-20th century, most people assumed the species had already quietly gone extinct, joining the long list of New Zealand birds lost to introduced predators. This is the point where, in 1974, that new government search began, driven by nothing more than a handful of old, unconfirmed reports from remote parts of Fiordland. The searchers got lucky. Between 1974 and 1977, they confirmed 18 surviving Kākāpō deep in the Fiordland wilderness. But there was a serious problem. Every single one of them was male. Male Kākāpō gather at traditional sites and produce a deep, booming call that can travel for kilometers through still night air, which made them relatively easy to locate. Females, by contrast, stay silent, nest on the ground, and raise their chicks entirely alone, making them almost impossible to find using sound. Without females, 18 surviving males meant nothing for the species' long-term future. It looked like the search had confirmed the Kākāpō's last, dying gasp rather than a real rescue. Then, in 1977, came the discovery that changed everything. Researchers picked up the sound of dozens of male Kākāpō booming from the hills of southern Stewart Island, known in Maori as Rakiura, a large remote island off New Zealand's southern coast. Early estimates suggested as many as 200 birds might be living there. And in 1980, after years of careful searching, the researchers finally confirmed what they had been desperately hoping for. Stewart Island had females too. This single population, quietly surviving on one large island at the bottom of the country, became the entire foundation for every Kākāpō alive today. But the discovery came with an urgent new problem. Feral cats had also colonized Stewart Island, and they were killing Kākāpō at a rate the tiny surviving population could not withstand. The birds that had just been found were already back on a fast track toward extinction, on the very island where they'd just been rediscovered. Conservationists made a difficult decision. Rather than trying to eliminate every feral cat from an island of that size, a nearly impossible task at the time, they chose to evacuate the surviving Kākāpō entirely, moving them by boat and aircraft to smaller, more manageable offshore islands where introduced predators could actually be eliminated for good. Between 1980 and 1997, in a series of careful translocations, the surviving Stewart Island population was gradually relocated to 3 predator-free island sanctuaries: Codfish Island, known as Wenuahau, Maud Island, and Little Barrier Island, known as Te Hauturu Otoi. One of the pivotal moments in that long evacuation came in 1982 when rangers loaded 18 Kākāpō, 11 males and 7 females onto transport for the journey from Stewart Island to Little Barrier Island. It was an enormous risk. These were among the last known breeding-age Kākāpō left on Earth, being physically moved one by one to a new home hundreds of kilometers away, with absolutely no guarantee the relocation would succeed. If the birds failed to settle, failed to breed, or simply didn't survive the move, there would be no second chance to try again with birds that no longer existed. They survived. Combined with birds already secured on the other sanctuary islands, the total known Kākāpō population going into the 1990s hovered at a genuinely terrifying low. By 1995, when the Department of Conservation and Ngai Tahu formally launched the modern Kākāpō recovery program, the entire global population of the species stood at just 51 known individuals, 31 males and 20 females. 51 birds. That was the entire remaining Kākāpō population on the planet. What followed was one of the most intensive, hands-on conservation efforts ever attempted for a single species. Because Kākāpō only breed once every 2 to 4 years, triggered specifically by mass fruiting events of the native rimu tree, researchers had almost no natural breeding windows to work with. Every single nest mattered. Rangers began supplementary feeding programs to boost female body condition ahead of breeding seasons. They developed hands-on nest monitoring, artificially incubating, and hand-rearing chicks when a mother's own attention faltered. Later, as the population's genetic diversity became a growing concern, scientists even turned to artificial insemination, working to make sure more of the surviving genetic lines had a chance to be passed on. Progress was agonizingly slow at first. Kākāpō can live 60 to 90 years, an extraordinary lifespan for a bird, but that same slowness extends to how rarely they reproduce, and for years the population inched forward only a few individuals at a time. Then, gradually, the intensive management approach began to pay off. A strong breeding season in 2002 helped stabilize the numbers. By 2019, an especially strong rimu mast year produced the largest breeding season recorded up to that point, with 73 chicks fledged. In 2021, the total population passed 200 for the first time in the modern recovery program's history. By 2022, the population reached 252, the highest number recorded since the 1970s. That number alone, moving from 51 critically endangered birds in 1995 to 252 just 27 years later, would already be considered a remarkable conservation success story on its own. But the most dramatic chapter came even more recently. In early 2026, following what researchers described as a mega-mast year, an unusually large, synchronized fruiting event across the rimu forests on the Kākāpō's island sanctuaries, nearly every breeding-age female began nesting at once. Heading into that breeding season, the global Kākāpō population stood at 236 birds, including 83 breeding-age females. The results stunned even the scientists who had spent their entire careers working with this species. By the time the season wrapped up, more than 95 chicks had hatched, smashing the previous record from 2019 by a wide margin and marking, in the words of New Zealand's Department of Conservation, the single biggest Kākāpō breeding season ever officially recorded. Think about the scale of that turnaround. In 1977, the entire known Kākāpō population consisted of 18 males calling into empty forest, with no females anywhere in sight, and every serious indication pointing toward extinction. 50 years later, give or take, a single breeding season on a handful of small, predator-free islands produced nearly 100 new chicks in 1 year alone. from a population that had briefly bottomed out at just 51 birds total. The recovery program's success has also created an unusual new problem: a shortage of space, with the population climbing well past 200 birds across just 3 small predator-free islands, Wenuahu, Pukenui, and Te Kakahu o Tamatea. Those island sanctuaries are now approaching capacity. In 2023, conservationists took the historic step of translocating a small group of male Kākāpō to a fenced mainland sanctuary called Maunga Tautari in the North Island, marking the species' first return to the mainland of New Zealand in decades. The birds sent were deliberately chosen to be male and non-breeding for this initial trial, since the primary goal was simply to learn whether Kākāpō could survive long-term in a large, fenced sanctuary rather than on a remote, predator-free island. If it works, it could eventually open up an entirely new category of habitat for the species, easing the pressure on islands that are running out of room for a population still trying to grow. The Rimu mast years that trigger kakapo breeding are themselves somewhat unpredictable, driven by complex environmental cues that scientists still do not fully understand, which is part of why a megamast year, like the one in 2026, carries so much weight. Between major mast events, Kākāpō may go 3 or 4 years without breeding at all, meaning every single productive season effectively has to make up for the years of enforced pause that came before it. That is what makes a single season producing more than 90 chicks so significant. It is not simply a good year. For a species with reproduction this rare and this fragile, it may represent a meaningful fraction of an entire generation, arriving all at once. The Kākāpō is still critically endangered, and conservationists are careful to say so. Genetic diversity across the population remains low, since every living Kākāpō descends from that same small handful of survivors found on Stewart Island in the 1970s and 80s, and the species still cannot survive anywhere on Earth without direct, ongoing, hands-on human management. There is no wild, self-sustaining Kākāpō population left outside of a small number of fenced or predator-free sanctuaries. But the story of how this bird was pulled back from the edge of total extinction through decades of translocations, hand-rearing, feeding programs, and one especially remarkable recent breeding season stands today as one of the clearest proofs in the history of conservation that a species written off as effectively finished can still come back if enough people refuse to give up on it in time. It helps to understand just how strange the Kākāpō actually is as a species, because that strangeness is part of why saving it has proven so difficult. Kakapo are lek breeders, which is an unusual and fairly rare breeding strategy among parrots. Each breeding season, males climb to high ridgelines and dig out shallow, bowl-shaped depressions in the earth, connected by cleared walking tracks, forming what researchers call a track and bowl system. From inside these bowls, a male inflates an air sac in his chest and produces a deep, resonant, booming call that can carry for several kilometers across still night air, repeating it for hours at a stretch, night after night, for months at a time. Females travel toward the loudest, most persistent, booming males to mate, then leave entirely and raise their chicks alone, with no help whatsoever from the father. It is a system that works well when the population is large and spread across a big landscape, and it becomes a serious liability once a species is reduced to a scattered handful of individuals, since a female may simply never encounter a booming male at all. Modern tracking technology has become essential to managing a population this fragile. Every living Kākāpō today wears a small transmitter, usually built into a lightweight harness resembling a tiny backpack, allowing rangers to monitor each individual bird's location, movement, and even nesting activity in near real time. Nest cameras alert rangers the moment a female begins incubating, so that eggs can be candled, weighed, and monitored for fertility problems long before they would otherwise be noticed. When researchers discovered, through genetic studies published in the early 2020s, that most Kākāpō reproductive failure actually stemmed from early embryo mortality linked to inbreeding rather than simple infertility, that finding directly shaped how the recovery program uses artificial insemination today, specifically targeting genetically underrepresented males to help preserve as much of the species' remaining diversity as possible. None of this technology existed when Richard Henry made his original attempt back in the 1890s, working with nothing more than a small boat, cages, and sheer determination to save a species he could see disappearing in front of him. His name is still honored today. One of the most famous individual Kākāpō in the modern recovery program, a hand-reared bird named Sirocco, who became something of an international celebrity after an unfortunate on-camera incident during a nature documentary went viral, descends from that same lineage of survivors that Henry and later the Fiordland and Stewart Island search teams worked so hard to protect. If you want to keep following real recovery stories like this one, stories about the species that came back from the very edge, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.